Here we are for a bonus round of the 70s versus the 90s. In this round, we have John Schlesinger's The Day of the Locust versus the Coen Brothers Barton Fink. And now this one was like, it was rough to get through, you know. It's a hard one. These movies are definitely like real, you know, mind fucky, shocky type shit. You know, so let's just dive right in. You know, the first one we have is John Schlesinger's The Day of the Locust, which is based off of a book that's about Hollywood in the mid to late 30s. And, you know, the screenplay is by Waldo Salt. It's produced by Jerome Hellman, who along with Schlesinger, all worked on the film Midnight Cowboy in the same kind of capacity, director, producer, and writer. And, you know, Waldo Salt also came up in that time of that this film takes place. You know, he was a writer and everything, and he also went through he was blacklisted in the 50s, and so like you kind of see like all of his animosity for Hollywood, you know, come to the forefront, you know, as we see, you know, the William Atherton's character, who's an art production designer, you know, and he, you know, not a big like fan of William Atherton. You know, he's pretty basic in this movie, and you know the film starts off very like mid, like it's just so slow. It doesn't really know what the fuck it wants to be. It's all over the place. You're meeting very eccentric characters, but even those aren't that fucking interesting. You know, the most interesting one is Billy Barty, who's just, you know, fuck funny as shit, you know, climbing on the bar to shut up and pour type shit. You know, that stuff's funny, but then you also got, you know, very unrecognizable Jackie Earle Haley, like even before the Bad News Bears, playing a weird, you know, kid trying to make it as a kid actor and shit, you know, real piece of shit who gets, you know, I wouldn't say he deserved what he got in the end. And you've got fucking Karen Black as, you know, this aspiring actress. You know, she gets excited, you know, she gets a small talking part, you know, she's on her way up, or at least she thinks she is, type thing. And so, and you know, William Atherton becomes enamored with her, you know, but she's also banging Bo Hopkins, who plays like a you know, low rent cowboy actor and shit. You know, Bo Hopkins is great in it too, you know. So it's real hit and miss, you know. Like I said, the film doesn't really know what the fuck it wants to be, you know. And then it's about, you know, 2/3 of the way into the movie when it finally gets interesting, you know, once that stage collapses. You know, I feel like, you know, William Atherton could have said some shit earlier, you know, he didn't do enough. And you see that guilt projected when he, you know, starts coming at the studio head. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure the signs were up. You know, that in and of itself should be more shocking, but just the blatant, like, fucking, you know, just standing by, not fucking doing shit, the passivity, it's just ridiculous, you know. And so, but you're trying to make these people feel guilty because you couldn't react fast enough. Like, oh, how fast can I put two and two together? And, you know, it's that kind of descent, you know, because in a way, you know, William Atherton's character, you know, he's kind of had it on easy street and shit. You know, gets to smooth with the fucking big time guys, you know, take them to cockfights and shit, you know, and then now he literally sees it all tumbling down and shit, you know, even at the time when he's getting, you know, the dude, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for the guy, you know, because he basically tries to rape Karen Black in the film when he's drunk. And, you know, not that excuses the fucking shit. And then he's all pining after this chick, you know, yeah, she just gave me the slip, you know, she won't fuck with me. I don't know, dude, I wonder why. Probably because you fucking probably tried to rape her and shit, you know. So it's just shit like that is bothersome. And then that fucking ending, though, the ending is what makes this movie memorable. And why a lot of people will probably be like, it's a great movie, you know. And, you know, sometimes if the ending is so good, you forget how shitty the beginning was. And I almost did for this one, because that, you know, the Donald Sutherland character, whose name is Homer Simpson, which is fucking hilarious. But at the time, that didn't mean shit, you know, because the Simpsons weren't even a fucking thing. But not only did this dude play the original Hawkeye, he played the original fucking Homer Simpson. But this dude's like a repressed fucking Bible thumper, nut job motherfucker. And, you know, he gets enamored with Karen Black, and he can't deal with the fact that she's a whore and doesn't want nothing to do with him and shit. So like he goes nuts at the fucking premiere of the Buccaneer, Cecil B. DeMille's film. And, you know, as he's just sitting at the fucking bench all fucking psychoed out, Jackie Earle Haley's fucking with him, and he gets mad because the dude's not fucking paying attention, so he throws a rock at his head. Well, this right there fucking, because the whole movie you're really just waiting for Donald Sutherland to snap, and it takes about 2 hours and 10 minutes for it to fucking happen. And when it does, though, that shit is insane, because he just, that right there just fucking sets off his primitive instincts, goes chasing after the kid falls, and he just proceeds to just stomp the shit out of this kid. And it's one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in a film. And then that fucking turns into an angry mob that literally like rips fucking Donald Sutherland apart. There's a whole new meaning to the word murderous mob. And so that ending in and of itself, that you see, it could have been one of the best sequences ever had Schlesinger not opted to go that fucking art house route. It's just, it doesn't really gel well, because it works, I guess, if you look at it as his death trip, and so in other words, it's like, because you don't see William Atherton at the end of the movie. You see Karen Black go to his fucking apartment where he put the fucking rose in the wall at the beginning and shit, and you just assume that he's dead. So I have to excuse all this fucking art house bullshit, because which could have been one of the greatest sequences and one of the most shocking of all time, but they cut it short, because that's the whole motif of the Day of the Locust. Is it it goes in it goes in these dynamic places, but then just shits the bed and focuses on dumb shit. Because honestly, the people in the fucking movie, or the people outside of the movie industry that are trying to get into it, are worse than the motherfuckers that run it. And then we move forward to Barton Fink, another outsider that comes into Hollywood almost reluctantly, though, because John Turturro, in what is probably his best performance, is playing this New York playwright who gets in, just has a smash hit on Broadway and then gets invited out to Hollywood to be an in-house writer. And Michael Lerner, who's brilliant as the studio head, Lipnick, and everybody's just phenomenal. And John Goodman at some of his psychotic best. The cast is just full of sultry. Judy Davis, Steve Buscemi is the creepy fucking the clerk in the fucking hotel. Chet, his name is Chet. Remember that shit. And, and John Mahoney is an alcoholic writer, just at the end of his rope. The Coen brothers are really good at creating these quirky worlds. They're really good at writing dialogue, and where, you could tell Schlesinger and Salt kind of really care about their characters. They don't necessarily understand them the way that the Coen brothers do. The Coen brothers understand their characters. They don't necessarily feel a certain type of way about them. They just let them thrive in this fucking world. And if you didn't know any better, you would think David Lynch made this fucking movie. I mean, even John Turturro has that haircut that's evocative of Jack Nance in Eraserhead, and the whole atmosphere is just tense and nervous and surreal, like a living nightmare, so to speak. The whole movie basically feels like Donald Sutherland trampling the shit out of Jackie Earle Haley in the Day of the Locust. It's just cringing, because you feel every ounce of Barton Fink's anxiety, and John Turturro brings that to life brilliantly. A great example of how amazing character actors can be when they actually are given a movie that they can be the lead in and just run with that shit. And especially with directors that know what the fuck they're doing, because I would argue Schlesinger was vibrant for his day, but by the time he gets to the Day of the Locust, it's just kind of hit and miss, because I think after Sunday Bloody Sunday, he was so he was so broken by the poor reception that it got, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to make the kind of movies he wanted to make. It had to be more commercial. So I would argue Ken Russell would have did a better job with Day of the Locust, and maybe give fucking Schlesinger Valentino or some shit. But at the end of the day, I gotta give it to Barton Fink, because all around Barton Fink from beginning to end is just a great movie. The atmosphere is there, the characters are dynamic. You're really into it. Where Day of the Locust, it takes so long, and I get it with films based off of novels. You try to really, really capture that world, but that's the freedom that novels have that the cinema has. Whereas Barton Fink sticks to a certain story, and we follow this man's descent into basically hell. That hotel on fire to me is basically hell. John Goodman's some kind of demon, and it's fucking Barton Fink upsets the status quo. Now he's got this crazy motherfucker, and the dude can't write. And like the biggest irony is that when he finally does write, nobody fucking likes it except him. And so like all of his like fear and anxiety, and Tony Shalhoub is another one that's fucking great. Like Geisler, that dude's fucking amazing. So it's like it goes to this. Barton Fink 90s win this round. For anybody keeping score, that's 12-9. 70s are still up by 3, but the 90s are coming back, because that's kind of a motif that of the 70s is like they'll have like really great endings, but getting to that ending is like so long and arduous, and a lot of times don't make a lick of fucking sense as compared to something like Barton Fink that's going on inside of this dude's fucking head, and like that makes more sense than something that's just a regular ass movie. His shit'll jump around, and then people will do this shit and that shit, and it's just I don't know. It just wasn't. It had potential to be a great movie, but Barton Fink, there's no denying that it is a great movie. Great performances, great direction, great script. The shooting and the editing is like you're not sure what's fucking real and what's not. Maybe this dude, and that to me that's more shocking than actually seeing like somebody just get fucked up, because that unsureness of like, is this dude a psycho killer, or is it, was it Madman Month the whole time? There's all these like unanswered questions and underlying like neuroses that, it's just nobody but the Coen brothers could make that work. And, in their early career, their follow up to Miller's Crossing, they just made that shit fucking soar. So 12-9, 70s are still up, but you see the 90s will come back. That's why I say I'm doing these bonus rounds, because I don't want to wait 3 years to see the outcome of this. I got to know now, and it's like it's really getting exciting, or at least for me anyways, because I know nobody probably gives a fuck, but I also know that the internet's hungry for content. So coming at you, all you film bros and film nerds and people that just love cinema, I encourage you to watch these movies before watch these fucking videos, debate me on this shit, call me, I'm just one guy with a fucking opinion. Who the fuck am I to say any of this shit? But nobody else is doing it, so I might as well, what the fuck else. So see more bonus rounds this weekend. The main event, of course, is Deliverance versus The River Wild, so that should definitely be exciting. And as the summer keeps going, it's definitely heating up.